So the rare crisis, this is in its international affairs rather than in terms of a German depth study. So what happens, 1923 to 1924? Germany has been delaying, avoiding paying most reparations payments. Its second or third one, it says no. And so France and Belgium decide, right, we've had enough of this, we're going to take it, we're going to get payments in kind. So they invaded the Ruhr area of Germany, its most industrial heartland, and they said, right, we are going to just take all the coal that's made here, the steel, all of this sort of stuff, this is what we're going to do. Because you've broken your treaty commitments, you naughty Germans. Here France is doing everything that people who say appeasement was wrong, that's what they mean, that they should follow what France does here. Every time in the 1930s you say Britain and France should have stood up to Nazi Germany, they should have done so in the Rhineland over Anschluss. This is what happens when they do stand up. This is the lesson. So Germany says, right, we're not going to pay anything, we don't want to do any of this shenanigans. We can't fight back because we've got nothing to fight back with. We will do nothing. Passive resistance. Just like when your folks or your people at home say you've got to tidy your room. And you go, you know you can't fight back. You just do nothing. Just don't do it. You cross your legs, cross your arms, not doing anything. This is what they do. They go on strike. And as we know from my German depth study, the German economy then collapses. The government pays the workers, it doesn't have the resources, the money, the taxation base to support its currency, so it has to print money. This creates hyperinflation. And then we have a problem. That's essentially the real crisis. What we need to look onto is what it leads into in terms of international affairs. And so it has far-reaching implications. Let's see what the lessons are. For France, it shows that they cannot confront Germany alone, militarily, and be successful. They can't do it. They've done it, and if they could do it in 1921, when it was easy, in 1937, 5, 6, 8, 9, it's going to be much more difficult. So the lesson that they learn is, we can't attack Germany, we can't force Germany to do things militarily. So from this, there are two consequences for France. Number one, they stop acting positively or aggressively or offensively towards Germany. Instead, they start building what's called the Maginot Line. Do you remember what the Maginot Line is?
Yes, it's a base. I'm so sorry. It's basically a long wall on the border of France and Germany that Germany just kind of went around later.
Oh, yeah, it's a wall makes it sound like something Donald Trump would come up with. All right, build a wall. Who's going to pay for it? The Germans. Reparations. No, it's a line of fortification. So simple terms is a wall, but actually it's like gun emplacements. All right, because the message that the big battle that the French fight in World War One is the Battle of Verdun in 1916. It's horrendous, about 1 million casualties on both sides. The Germans deliberately fight the French at Verdun with one express aim. Falkenhayn, who's the general, his aim is to bleed the French army white. It's not to capture ground, it's that the French have to fight for Verdun, and so that they will die fighting. It's to kill as many French people as possible. Now, as an Englishman, I might find this laudable. I might say, well done, Germany, it's a great idea. But of course it's not. And it's a horrendous battle. The French, if there can be a winner in such a battle, they win. or rather the Germans don't succeed. So what lessons do the French learn from this in terms of military tactics? Defend. If you defend and you have lots of defensive positions, they shall not pass. Which was when they nearly fell, the French government did a guy called Marshal Pétain, who will become very important in 1940. Because he turns into the hero of the battle and he says, they shall not pass. Obviously in French, je ne passe, je ne passe. Alright? And so the French believe in defence. So they set up the Maginot Line. This creates what one historian has got, A.J.P. Taylor, calls a Maginot mentality. Well, we don't need to do anything about the Germans because we're safe. If we spend millions of dollars building this big defensive fortifications, it doesn't matter how strong Germany is, they'll never get through. And so this has the effect of making France procrastinate, not take any action as it comes into the 1930s. For them, the Maginot Line turns into, you know, when you have a duvet day. A duvet. When you wake up in the morning, you're like, I can't face the world. Life sucks. Don't want to go to school. Everybody sucks. I'm going to pull over my duvet and I'm going to hide from the world. Ever have a day like that? Welcome to France in the 1930s. Alright, it's France in the 1930s. I don't know what to do. I don't like Germany. Everybody hates me. I'm just going to hide behind the Maginot Line and I'm nice and safe. That's what they do. Now, Varney's pointed out quite rightly, as we'll see in 1940, there's a big problem. The big problem is Belgium is supposed to build a bit of a line too. But after this, Belgium is like, well, France, you kind of suck. So what we're going to do is we're going to be neutral. And we can't build a wall, a series of fortifications on the German border if we don't build one on the French border, because that would look like we're being anti-German. So we're neutral, so we won't build any fortifications at all, to show how neutral we are, and this will mean we won't be attacked. Hey guys, don't attack us. Which means there's a major problem with the French Maginot Line. You don't need to go through it, you can go round it, which is what happens in 1940. So that's number one. That's what France learns. Germany learns, at least until Mr. Hitler comes to power. Germany learns that confronting France in this way comes at a huge cost. The Germans are like, yes, haha, we're going to defeat you, we're not going to do anything. And they basically cut off their nose to spite their face. Right? They just destroy their own. We had to, in a saying in the Vietnam War of some captain who said, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. Kind of okay. It's like we had to destroy Germany in order to save Germany. They destroyed it by hyperinflation. So, Germany realizes confronting France, bad idea. France realizes confronting Germany, bad idea. Let's therefore, both countries now have a reason to start working together. They realize they have to work together, they can't work against each other. So, in the first instance, this leads into 1924, the Dawes Plan, which we know restructures reparations to a level Germany says it can afford, or at least stops complaining about as much. And this is where we have the international cycle of money. In New York, the Americans lend money to Germany. Germany uses that money to pay their reparations to Britain and France. Britain and France then use that money to pay their war debt back to America. This is the basis of the Jazz Age, the Roaring Twenties. American finance. Therefore, what is the economy, world economy, in the 1920s completely dependent upon? American finance. What is peace in Europe therefore dependent upon? American finance. Let's just hope. Oh, and what is the centre of American finance? Where is it? It's on a street in New York called Wall Street. Let's hope where the stock market and financial institutions are. Let's hope nothing bad happens on Wall Street, hey? Here's a picture. There's a French soldier guarding a train load of coal bound for France. This is them taking it in kind. Right? The thing that this leads up to is the big turning point. This is the high point. This is the turning point after World War I. France and Germany, they start getting it on, and they get it on in Locarno. Locarno. Did you do Locarno? Okay, so let's go before. So before Locarno, this is why it makes it such a turning point. Before Locarno, Germany and France, as we've seen, have been in conflict. The Ruhr crisis brings that conflict to a climax, but they've also been there since World War I, obviously. Germany has been treated as a second-class country. You're not allowed to join the League of Nations, Germany. Boo. What happens afterwards? They fix the German border, which means Germany gives up Alsace-Lorraine. Okay, you can have Alsace-Lorraine. So it removes the major point of tension between Germany and France, a point of tension that was there right up before World War I, that existed since the formation of Germany in 1871. Alsace-Lorraine is no longer an issue. The border is fixed. This should mean that Germany and France don't have any issues with each other. Germany joins the League of Nations. Hey Germany, you've proved yourself to be a decent country. You're not too bad after all, Germany. Come and join. Be with us. Join the world community, Germany. This creates goodwill between countries. This is what's known as the Locarno spirit, the spirit of Locarno. And Locarno is seen therefore as being a first step. It's got big butts, just like a Kardashian. Thank you for laughing at my joke. Alright, it only fixes the western border. It doesn't fix the eastern border. Essentially what we see is Treaty of Versailles and Locarno. Treaty of Versailles is the selfishness of Britain. Hey, we get everything we wanted. No navy, no air force, lots of colonies for us. Everything else we don't really care about. It's fine. That'll sort itself out later. The French at Locarno, yeah, we've got our border with Germany fixed. That's all great. We've got reparations coming in. That's Britain. Eastern Europe, don't worry. This is the triumph of Stresemann, the German Foreign Secretary, who we've looked at already. This is his great triumph. He's made Germany now, after World War I, a first-rate power. Is welcomed back into the international community. However, what you must see is this is a process, and Locarno is the first step on the process. It's not a result. Alright? It's not a result. It's a process. The first step to end world peace and disarmament. Because that's the key thing that the League of Nations is all about, is about disarmament. It leaves an unopened question. If the international climate changes, will there be a return to hostility? Alright, that's the importance of Locarno. It's that turning point as a result of the Ruhr crisis. It then means and goes forward to other things that happen in the later part of the 1920s as the Jazz Age is going on. Alright, so we end up from Locarno and we have the Kellogg-Briand Pact, the cousin or the great nephew of Mr. Kellogg and his cornflakes. He's a U.S. Secretary of State, I think, and Briand is the French. Kellogg-Briand Pact. This is the high point of international relations in the 1920s. The countries that sign it renounce war as an instrument of policy. Every country says, we will not go to war.
What is the point of renouncing war and that being an entire treaty?
Because it shows that you're not going to use it as policy, you're not going to declare war on policy.
But does that actually stop anyone from doing that?
No, what happens is countries have stopped declaring war.
Oh.
So, Russia invades Ukraine, it's an emergency action. United States and Britain bomb Yemen, it's a response to terrorism, a counterinsurgency. Alright? This is what happens when no country, so what basically this happens is, no country declares war anymore. Like in the past, your ambassador will go, I'm very sorry, I am now at war with you, here's a note, we will be at war, and you go, oh no, we're at war now. So essentially what happens is, no country says they're at war, they say it's self-defense under Article 5 of the United Nations, or they say it's an emergency act, or they say it's counter-terrorism. Change the definition. Because it's still in existence, Calabria, in fact, it's still there. We have the Young Plan. Again, this is the next one, because obviously reparations is still an issue. The Germans are still complaining about it. And this is a process to reduce their reparations. Oh, excuse me. And then finally, in 1932, talk about timing. Well done. 1932 going to 1933. Finally, they go round to disarmament. We're going to have disarmament. We're going to get rid of weapons and guns. Yes. Why 1932? Bad time. What two things are happening in 1932? Going into 1933.
Adolf Hitler's taken control of Germany.
Adolf Hitler comes to power in January of 1933. And what's the situation in the world in 1932?
Like economic.
Great Depression.
Yeah.
Well, Great Depression. Right, it's got a Great Depression. So this means, why would the Great Depression mean that countries are unwilling to cut expenditure into their armies?
Their army gives people employment.
Yes, they've got massive unemployment. Hey guys, I'm just going to go back, vote for me in the election that's coming up. By the way, if you're in the army and you're in a munitions factory, you're in any kind of factory that makes guns or ships, here's you're redundant. You've got no job left. Alright, so that's going to make countries less likely to do it. But the main reason why the disarmament, so that's one reason, that's why if you're Britain and France and America, particularly Britain and France, you're not going to disarm. Because you're going to have to make lots of people redundant, lose their jobs. What do you think Hitler's point is? Because Hitler actually...
Oh, is it that like the Jews...
No, nothing about Jews. Wait. No bad Jews. What's his point about disarmament? And it's quite a good one.
Oh, no one else has had to disarm?
We've already disarmed. We've already disarmed. You should disarm. Wait, what? You gave us 100,000 army. You took away our tanks. We don't need to disarm, dudes. We already disarmed. You need to disarm. That's point number one. And then the rest of the world goes, we don't really, oh no, maybe, or we don't know. So then he says something next. You've already said in Nakano Germany should be treated the same as everybody else. Right? We're the same country. Is that right? Yes, Mr. Hitler. That's right. You're the same as everybody else. Okay. So, if we're the same as everybody else, this is what's going to happen. You, particularly France and everybody else, disarm to our level to be fair, or we'll rearm to your level to be fair. What say you, Disarmament World Conference people? And they go, and so what does Hitler do? We're going to leave. See you later, cheerio. This is not fair. You're not fair. We're going to leave and we're going to rearm. And it's fair we rearm because we're just rearming up to your level. That's why the disarmament conference fails. And this is where you've got to say Hitler has a point. In fact, German. If this was Stresemann, you'd be going, "Yes, Stresemann, good stuff. Good point. Yes, that's absolutely right and fair." And so German rearmament starts. This is the first, and this is also Hitler being very clever, because this gets rid of the Treaty of Versailles, or at least the first part of the Treaty of Versailles gets destroyed, and he makes it in such a way that it's clear to everybody he's got a point and he's probably in the right. If you look at it dispassionately, without hindsight of knowing what's going to happen, he's in the right. He's only asking for equitable treatment. So that's the World Disarmament Conference, alright? We have this great years of Locarno. This is the high point. This is when everybody's getting along. But so much depends on economic prosperity that when that evaporates, when that economic prosperity disappears, those hostilities resurface and authoritarian regimes come to power. Because now they're much more likely to risk force for their aims. Britain and France have been shown that they're not willing to risk force. Britain and France are more concerned about their economy. But Germany now knows, Germany, Italy, and Japan, they will now start to risk the use of force. One of the consequences, do we have that next? That will be next. And we'll look, actually I'm going to go on to this one next actually. Because this is the impacts of the Great Depression. And this is where you have to differentiate the Great Depression from the Wall Street crash. The Wall Street crash, let's say whatever day in October it was, 9th of October let's say, biggest single fall on the New York Stock Exchange. What day was the biggest single rise on the New York Stock Exchange?
The day before.
Day after. Funny, huh? So it's a series of processes, alright? What causes the Great Depression is not so much the Wall Street crash. Stock markets crash quite a lot of the time. What causes the Great Depression is the reaction to the Wall Street crash. And that reaction destroys banking system, and it particularly destroys international trade. What do we say about money and banks? Remember, is money real? It's a made up thing. Banks create money. They have what's called an asset reserve ratio. It can be something like 10 to 1. That means for every asset, every reserve, every, let's say, 1 rupee, the bank will lend out 10 rupees. Okay? 10 to 1 reserve ratio. 5 rupees if it's 5-1 with a reserve ratio. And it does that. You put your money in the bank lends out that money to other people for mortgages, buy cars, loans, all of that type of stuff. But it lends it out 5 times rather than once. So our banks make money, which is fine under normal circumstances. It's not fine when everybody turns up at the bank. Can I have my money, please? No bank in the world, if everybody does that, is able to pay everybody. They're just not. And well, can you imagine? I bank at HDFC. All right, and if I heard that HDFC cash machine or had run out of money, what would I do? I would say, sorry guys, I'm just off to the bank. I want to get all my money out as soon as possible, right? Because I don't trust that bank to be solvent anymore. That's called a run on the bank. Run on the bank. There's a wonderful, famous, my favourite Christmas movie of all time called It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy Stewart. You should watch that at Christmas. Beautiful black and white movie. And it's about a run on the bank in a small town village. Small town. That collapses the banking system. That's number one. People start, if your banking system collapses, nobody's investing, nobody's loaning money, nobody's spending money. It's an absolute disaster. The second thing is how you react in terms of trade. And what people do, countries do, starting off in the United States, they put tariffs onto imports. What's a tariff on an import?
Some sort of fee.
What's a fee from a government called? A tax, no? So it's tax on imports. So what does that do? What that does is, and it's seen at this time as a way of protecting your industries. You want to keep people in work. So a way to help your people in steel industry, you put a tariff on imported steel. That makes steel from outside your country more expensive, so that people inside your country will buy your own country steel. You then do that for every single good you can do. Alright? If you're in one of those countries, let's say you're Britain or you're France or you're Germany or whatever, and you are exporting your steel or whatever to America, and they put on 10% tax on your stuff, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to that?
Put a tax on their stuff.
You put tax on their stuff. You have a tit for tat. All right. This happens all across the world. What do you think that's going to do to international trade? It's going to decrease. All right. International trade collapses by 95%. 95%. What's going to happen to people who are in those industries, export industries? They don't have any jobs. All right. So this is what really is the Great Depression. Not so much the Wall Street crash. That's pretty bad. That can be over with. It's the response. It's the collapse of the banks, and it's the protectionism that collapses international trade and creates this downward spiral where the economies all tank around the world. All right. That's the major problem. Wall Street crash, Great Depression, two different things. So, this leads to another thing. This leads to our how does this fit in with what we're talking about later with Italy, Japan, and Germany? If your economy, there's no international trade. So, what determines the size of your own country's economy? The size of your country, correct? How do you get what resources do you have access to if there's no trade? The resources that you have within your own country. So, question: how do you then, as a policymaker, grow your economy, and how do you then get resources that you don't have?
Invasion.
You take over somebody else's land. that has this effect, three effects. One, you get their resources. Okay? Two, you get their people that you can sell stuff to. Then your market, you can sell stuff to. Okay? Three, that's going to grow your economy. That's going to create jobs for your own people. Alright? So, suddenly, Great Depression makes invading other countries seem like a really good idea because of the collapse of international trade. Which major country has the fewest natural resources?
It's either Germany or Japan.
It's not Germany. Germany's got lots. So it's Japan. Japan has no natural resources. And so Germany's got no natural resources. So Japan's got no natural resources. So, or very little natural resources. Certainly no coal, certainly no oil, certainly no steel or iron. So, how badly affected is Japan going to be from the Great Depression, the collapse of international trade? Really, really, really badly affected. Alright? That's why the Japanese call this, the 1930s, the Dark Valley. Alright? So Japan's really, really badly affected. Trade has absolutely destroyed its economy. People are starving in Japan. Literally, people are starving in Japan. The government is kind of like collapsing, they can't really cope with this. So Japan is going to be our first country which is going to think, well, right next door to us, there's this lovely juicy Manchuria. China's falling apart. It's not really a proper country in those days. Warlords. It's divided up into groups. We can get some of that juicy Manchuria. So this is the impact. This is the major impact of the Great Depression. Can you see how that's linked? The key is the collapse of international trade. That leads to everything. And you need to be very clear on the connection and the links between the two. Wall Street crash leads us to the implementation of tariffs. Tariffs leads to protectionism, countries protecting their own industries. This leads to international trade collapsing. This means that countries who are reliant on international trade don't have access to resources. This means that in order to get the resources that they need, in order to reach the markets, to grow their markets at home, to sell their goods to, the only way is to invade another country. That's exactly why. With a little bit of hugely dysfunctional government and military for Manchuria. But we'll come on to that later. Alright, so also one other point as well about the impact of the Great Depression. We've talked about how if the League of Nations is going to act, it needs Britain and France to act. They're the only two countries that can do anything. Sorry Paraguay, sorry Portugal, Bulgaria. You guys can't really send your army to Manchuria. You can't really go to war. If a country does decide to go to war, what is it going to have to do?
Enough resources?
Sorry? It needs resources. Okay. Where's he going to get those resources from?
And also trade.
No trade.
No trade.
So within its own country, what's he going to have to do?
Use its own resources.
Use its own resources. How do you get resources? Your own resources. You're not going to steal them. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to pay for them. You're going to have to pay. Pay for soldiers, pay for guns, pay to rearm, pay for guns, pay for ships, pay to sail them all there. All of these things you're going to need to pay for. What don't you have a lot of? Money. How are you going to pay? Oh, I know. I can ask people to pay their taxes. You're already really unpopular government. You're not going to do that. So, whereas we've just seen the Great Depression means, and the collapse of international trade means, countries that don't have anything, Japan, Italy, Germany, it makes them more likely to risk going to war. It means those countries that have a little bit, Britain and France, much less likely to go to war. So we have this double whammy. Countries much more wanting to go to war, countries much less likely to go to war to stop them. Therefore, what's going to happen? War. Big thing of the Great Depression. People often get the fact that, yes, we can see why Germany and Japan and Italy, they react to the Great Depression, but they don't get the other side, which is this is why Britain and France don't want to. Alright? This is a turning point in international relations, okay? Because the Great Depression creates the environment. This is a really important slide here, so make sure you've got this and you pay attention to it, alright? The Great Depression creates the environment for the failure of the League of Nations and the origins of World War II, and the growth of extreme politics. That growth of extreme politics we've seen in Nazi Germany, the election of the Nazis. It creates popular discontent with democracy around the world. In the early 1930s, you've got most countries in Europe are democracies. By 1939, it's Britain, France, Belgium, Holland, Scandinavia. That's it. All the other countries are dictatorships. Okay, so the democracy collapses because of this. These democracies are looking to cut government expenditure, so they can't increase defence spending. Because they can't increase defence spending, they lack the military power to intervene in the League of Nations in support of the League of Nations. So this leads to appeasement. We don't have the ability to do it, so if we make some kind of agreement, we'll try and satisfy what you say, because some of what you say is fair. Hitler getting out of the disarmament conference, you can't really argue with that. There's logic behind it. The Rhineland is part of Germany. Why shouldn't Germans put troops inside Germany? Anyway, France is safe. It's got its nice Maginot Line. Right? So appeasement ends up, particularly by the British, as a way to manage this issue. If we can satisfy Hitler's goals, some of which we know we agree with, then we can do something about it. Alright? It also means as well, we talked about the economic consequences of rearming. Well, what about economic consequences of sanctions? When it comes to Abyssinia, you talk about, well, we need to boycott, we need to stop your basic sanctions, we stop trading with Italy. We don't allow Italy to buy stuff from us. Well, the consequence of that is going to be more unemployment. Don't really want to do that. Alright, so this is the environment that we have. And it makes these countries want to expand to require raw materials, in the case of Japan in Manchuria, build an empire, resurrect the Roman Empire in Abyssinia, or just get rid of the Treaty of Versailles in case of Germany. Remember, Germany comes to the party last. War's already started. So, the Great Depression encourages the revisionist countries of Japan, Italy and Germany, don't know why I've done them lowercase there, to use force in international relations, whilst at the same time the Great Depression made the democracies of Britain and France increasingly unwilling and unable to resist them. Therefore, the Great Depression created the environment in which the League of Nations could collapse, and British and French policy ensured that the League of Nations would collapse. Oh, do you see what we've done there? It's very important. Most people just say the Great Depression caused the League of Nations to collapse. And superficially, you can agree with that. But it doesn't specify how. Rather, the Great Depression creates the environment in which the League of Nations could collapse. But it was British and French policy that ensured that it did collapse. See the difference between the two? And one is a possibility, the other makes it a probability. Alright?